Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. First of all, I want to thank Dr. Idris for being our group evaluator for VDB4053 Engineering in Society May 2020 semester project. Our title for the project is Chernobyl Power Plant Project Failure, a review of technical, ethical, and recommendation for failure. So this is my group mates. We have Ahmad Huzaifie, me myself, Mohamad Haikal. We have one Adli Nuaim. We have Mohamad Zaim, and also we have Mohamad Adil Azuar. So moving on to the first chapter of the project, which is the introduction. According to World Bank, in 1988, the human population at that time was 4.4 billion, while in 2020, the human population is 7.6 billion, reaching 7.6 billion. So how can we actually cope with the demand of energy? One of the answer is to utilize nuclear power. But out of the 440 nuclear power plant in the world, the most famous accidents regarding the nuclear power plant is, yes, it is the Chernobyl power plant accident. So from this Chernobyl power plant accident, we have come up with three different problem statements. The first one is, what is the technical reasons of failure? The second problem statement is, uh, does ethical aspect actually contribute to the failure? And the last problem statement from this Chernobyl power plant is, what does the Chernobyl accident teach the nuclear energy society? And from this problem statement, we have come up with three different objectives. The first one would be to understand and explain the technical failure of the reactor, which is the cause of this explosion. Next, we also want to comprehend the ethical reasons of failure, and also we want to know the how can we actually improve the safety standard of running a nuclear power plant. That's all for chapter 1. Next, I pass the floor to my friend for chapter 2.
Greetings everyone, I'm Zaim and now I'll be presenting on chapter 2, which is the literature review. Okay, the Chernobyl nuclear power plant is known as the Vladimir Ilyich Lenin nuclear power plant. This incident occurred in 1986. The location of this power plant is located about 130 km north Kiev in Ukraine, in an abandoned prepared town. Okay, the town was filled with 45,000 employees of a nuclear power plant. Um, in this nuclear power plant, it consists of 4 nuclear reactors. They constructed and designed in 3 phases from 1970 to 1983. Okay, the shape of these nuclear reactors is vertical cylinders with circumference of 11.8 meter and a height of 7 meter. Um, as you can see, the center of this nuclear reactors is composed of clustered graphite blocks with a density of 1,700 tons. Okay, in the chronology of the incidents, the explosion occurred in reactor number 4 on 26 April 1986. Okay, by looking in the details of the event, okay, in April 25th, 1986, at 1 a.m., the operators had to shut down reactor number 4, and in order for them to perform a test to determine whether the turbines can produce enough electricity to keep the coolant pumps operate during the power failure. Okay. Later that night, the operators had to change shift, where the less experienced operators were on a night shift. However, they did not receive proper instructions on performing the test. Okay, and then a few hours later, around 1 a.m. On April 26, 1986, the test officially started, but unexpected situation occurred, whereby the explosion occurred and blows off 1,000 tons roof above the reactor. The whole plant was blackout, and the air were filled with dust and graphite chunks, and the radiation started to spread out to the atmosphere. Around 2 a.m., the local Soviet officials were called to have an emergency meeting by blocking the cars from entering and exiting the prepared town. Okay, around 5 a.m., the plant started to shut down for all reactors in the nuclear power plant. Now I'll pass the floor to the next presenter.
Thank you, Mohamad Zaim, for explaining the literature review of Chernobyl incident. Next, my name is Mohamad Adil Azuar bin Mohamad Zailani, and my matric ID is 24057. I will be explaining about the technical reason of failure of Chernobyl incident. As explained by Mohamad Zaim before, the Chernobyl power plant is used RBMK 1000 type of reactor, which stands for Reactor Bolsho Mochnostsi Kanalnya, which means a high power channel reactor of 1000 megawatt. It means that this type of reactor must be operated at a very high power. This type of reactor also designed to generate both plutonium and electrical power. However, during the incident, the reactor was operated at low power. Due to this, it caused the reactor to become extremely unstable. Since the reactor has become unstable, it has led to an uncontrollable power surge that caused a sudden increase in heat inside the pressure tube containing fuel. Since the temperature inside the pressure tube increased, it also increased the pressure inside these pressure tubes. When the pressure is very high, it caused the pressure tube to explode and cause an explosion. And due to this explosion, it has caused a fire inside the power plant, and this fire is burned for almost 10 days. For these 10 days, it has emitting a huge volume of radiation to the environment and cause toxicity to the humans and also to the living things that live around the Chernobyl power plant. Next, I will pass my presentation to Huzaifie to explain further for ethical reasons of failure.
Hi, I'm Ahmad Azman, measure ID 22604. I'll be talking about the ethical analysis on incident. So basically, professional ethics is a predefined set of standards created and regulated by the professional community with the aim to guide the behavior of the professionals. Generally, the principles of codes of ethics are similar in all society of engineering and cooperation in the world. According to NSPE 2020, examples of the fundamental of code of ethics are as shown in the slide. The Chernobyl nuclear disaster is an example of an engineering failure that was induced by various factors, technically and ethically. So the ethical reasonings of the Chernobyl disaster are discussed according to the violations of the professional engineering ethics. First violation is engineers shall perform services only in the areas of their competencies. According to the earlier reports by the International Nuclear Safety Advisory Group in such one, upon failed experiment, the plant staff have reported to the directorate in the managerial department regarding the risk if the experiment is to be proceeded continuously without safety measures. However, the plant staff was instructed to proceed with the experiment, which then led to the incident when sudden surge of energy occurred. This shows that the professional ethics has been violated by the managerial department as they gave instructions to the plant staff even when they were not knowledgeable and expertise in the matter. Next violation is the failure to act to correct or report a situation that the practitioner believes may endanger the safety or the welfare of the public. The accident occurred due to the violations of several operating procedures and other mandatory operating requirements. According to the reports by InSuch One, the plant staff have neglected many safety requirements upon facing the issues with the reactor. Apart from that, the plant staff also did not prepare proper documents and reports, which lead to mistakes in their decision making. In the case of lack of operating documentations, the operating log by senior reactor control engineer only recorded the observations on the reactor's behavior, however did not elaborate on the actions should the behavior recurred. Last violation is engineers shall issue public statements only in an objective and truthful manner. According to the World Nuclear Association reports, an amount of 250 firemen were present at the site. However, the right and accurate information regarding the scale of the fire and hazards that may be faced by the firemen were not delivered in timely manner, causing the lack of preventive measures during the radiation exposure were taken by the firefighter office. Therefore, it leads to the fatalities of 6 firemen together with 2 workers that passed from the explosions and 22 plant staff that had died as the consequences of acute radiation poisoning from the accident. Apart from that, Chernobyl nuclear power plant was built in a populated area, thus the mass public were also present in the radius of the explosion accident. However, citizens of the area were not informed regarding the accident and the risk of radiation they are exposed to. According to the World Nuclear Association, the accident that took place on the 25th April 1996 was only briefly announced to the public after 3 days by the Soviet Union, which it seemed to be too late for containment of radiation exposure to the public, as many fatalities and radiation-related diseases were reported in years after the accident. Further information about the ethical analysis on the accident can be reviewed in the report. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Adli Nuaim bin Ahmad Nadzri, and I'll be talking about the recommendation to prevent similar failures in future. Okay, with my metric ID is 23473. Now, the first one is the recommendation can be made in terms of the design, in which the Chernobyl plant, the addition of the inhibitors to the core to prevent runaway reaction at a lower power, and because the increase in the number of the control rod used in this operation, yeah, basically they will increase number, and also the fuel enrichment. So basically the control rods were also retrofitted so that the graphite would not move into a position that would increase reactivity. And second one is in terms of the safety, in which the Western government, they build some sort of structure so called the new new confinement space NSC. This is to encase the entire reactor to contain all the radioactive material from being dispersed to the atmosphere. And as you can see in the picture here, basically this NSC is the largest ever made movable structure on the planet. And the third one is the recommendation in terms of work frame, in which the Western government, they improve some things, including the radiation protection action, health surveillance, and work process in the workplace. This is to enhance the preparedness to a nuclear accident, the early, intermediate, as well as the long-term recovery phase. So you can see here the before, during, and after. Maybe for before, they need to train the medical personnel and establish, improve the disease registry. And for the during, they need to provide sheltering advice and support. And last but not least, maybe the Western government need to offer health screening to the population, launch public health studies, and listen to their needs and worry. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Adli. So moving on to the last chapter, which is the conclusion, chapter 6. The conclude report that this accident happened on prepared Ukraine on 26th of April is due to two aspects of engineering failure. The first one is the technical aspect, in which they have flaws in the reactor design, and also they don't have any emergency containment for the reactors. So the solution for this technical failure is the scientists and the engineer have come up with a new reactor design, in which already been explained before, and also they already installed a new safety compartment to actually reduce the radiation happen at the reactor 4. And that's the first aspect, technical aspect. The second aspect of failure is due to the ethical violations, in which the project concludes that the engineers actually violates the professional engineering ethics, in which they run the reactor with a lower number of control rods without a strong experimental results. And the second ethical violation is by the authorities, in which they did not give enough information about the fire and radiation hazards for the firemen, and it's even worse for the public, in which they actually give the information only 3 days after the explosion happened. So for this ethical failure, the European Union have come up with a tighten the framework of operating nuclear power plant, which have been also discussed earlier. So all in all, the Chernobyl power plant here shows us that the importance of following the engineering ethics, either in ethical and also in the technical, in which the reactor 4 have run for 13 years, but it is still exploded due to some of the uh, them who involved with the operation did not follow the ethics. And also, the last conclusion here is we can conclude that the objective of the project have been successfully achieved because we knew the technical failure, the ethical failure, and also what can be done to actually avoid this kind of accident from happening again. So with that, we thank you.